Okay, so we're just about ready to begin a little journey here. We're going to try to start a new project today. So we're going to try to look at the Song of Songs. We have done so last year. We did a few classes on the Song of Songs, but this week, this round, we'll do it a little bit differently. We're not going to cover the whole book. We really want to cover the Hasidic discourses of Rabbi Shneur Zalman on the book of the Song of Songs. So what is the Song of Songs? The Song of Songs is one of the books of the Bible. It's in the Ketuvim, it's in the writings, and it is attributed to King Solomon, because that's the opening verse, Shir Hashir in the Song of Songs, Asher Lishlomo, which is to Solomon. And seemingly it's a story about a love story between a young girl and her beloved. We're not sure who the beloved is, the different interpretations. It's either the king or a shepherd or both. And it's a beautiful, very poetic story. The question is, of course, what it's doing in the Bible. And the way the sages, the way the traditional Medrash, and we're going to call them the Chazal, our sages, the way they read the story, they say the story is a metaphor. What is a metaphor? It's a metaphor for the love between God and the Jewish people. And as we alluded to a year ago, there's all kinds of ways of interpreting the metaphor. And generally speaking, as we will see, there's at least three general categories of how to think about the metaphor of the Song of Songs. So we'll get to that in a minute. But before that, we want to talk about what are the customs associated with the Song of Songs. So there are Sephardic customs that. So before we do that, what does Song of Songs add to the religious experience? When you read the Torah, a lot of the Torah is what is our relationship with God. So a lot of the relationship seems like we're serving God. The Torah says, "You shall serve the Lord your God." In our prayers on Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, there's a very famous prayer, Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King. In other words, there's multiple relationships. You have a relationship with a king, which is someone you have to serve, and then you have a relationship with a parent. And a parent, it's obviously a much different form of a relationship. It's a relationship that's predicated on the fact and love also, but it's the fact that we're one entity. So the emphasis is not so much the serving, but it's love. So that's sort of what we would call standard Judaism. Before you get to the Song of Songs, the book of the Song of Songs opens up a whole nother dimension to the relationship between God and the Jewish people. Here, it's not he's our parent. It's not that he's our king, but here there's an element of a romantic relationship. And romantic relationship is certainly love, but it's different than the love to parents for many reasons. Love to parents is natural. So it doesn't go up and down. There's no changes. And romantic love, of course, is much more passionate, but much more complicated because love to a parent is ultimately natural because we're one and the same in some sense. But romantic love is to a stranger, and it has to be to a stranger. So what I'm trying to say is that the element of the Song of Songs is not just a technicality, another way of discussing our relationship with God, but it opens up a whole new dimension in the Jews' spiritual connection to God. And again, like I said, we're multifaceted, and there are different elements to the relationship. We serve God. God is our parent, but there's also an element of romantic love, and that's what this song is trying to depict, and that's what the Song of Songs is saying. Now, the Song of Songs is not the first book to say that, because the metaphor of romantic love exists earlier. Well, I'm not going to say earlier, it's really later, but it's, in other words, chronologically, it's later. In the order of the Bible, it's earlier, in the prophets. So you have Isaiah and many other prophets use the metaphor of a romantic relationship to depict the relationship between God and the Jewish people. But nowhere is it as strong and as powerful as the Song of Songs. So that is introduction number one. Introduction number two, if you're lucky enough to be a Sephardi, because the Sephardim are very into the Kabbalah, maybe that's the reason, maybe not, I don't know. The Sephardim read the scroll, the Song of Songs, the 8 chapters, they read it every Friday afternoon, right before Shabbat, which is very romantic and very beautiful because according to the Kabbalah, Shabbat is the time where the Shekhinah, the feminine energy of God, which descends to give life to the world during the 6 days, reunites with the masculine energy of God on Shabbat, with the 6 Sfirot, and you have the reunification of Za and Malchut, the 6 Sfirot with the 7th Sfirot. Without getting too Kabbalistic, it's a very romantic time up in heaven. So the Sephardim read the Song of Songs every Friday afternoon as Shabbat is entering. Very beautiful. If you're not as lucky to be a Sephardi, but you're Ashkenazic Jew, so they formally read it on Passover. Why Passover? Because usually Shabbat Chol HaMoed, the Shabbat of Passover, the Shabbat that's in the middle of Passover. This year there was no Shabbat in the middle of Passover, but in any case, the Shabbat in the middle of Passover is the time where that most Ashkenazic communities read it, because according to the tradition, the traditional interpretation of the sages, many of the metaphors of the Song of Songs refer to the courting of God, God courting his beloved, the bride, or the girl who he wants to be his bride. A lot of that historically refers to the time of the Exodus of Egypt. And therefore, we read it during the Exodus of Egypt. There are other interpretations because of, the story of the Song of Songs takes place during the spring. And that's part of the plot of the story, because the spring represents nature is coming to life, and therefore the love also flourishes. So if you're Ashkenazi, you're going to read it once a year. That may be a plus, maybe a minus, because you read it every week. Sometimes it loses the excitement. It's not as what's the word I'm looking for? It's not as exotic. But in any case, if you're Chabad, unfortunately for us, we don't read it formally at all. We don't read the book. We don't have any formal reading of the book of Song of Songs. So that's a problem. There are many discourses in Hasidic philosophy on the Song of Songs, and traditionally you study them on Pesach because the Ashkenazim read it on Pesach. So we also have to read the Song of Songs. The bottom line is now after Pesach is a good time to read the Song of Songs, also because, like I said, it's the season of the spring, and that's where a lot of the story takes place. That's introduction number 2. Then we go into introduction number 3. Introduction number 3 is that there are generally at least three ways of interpreting what the story is referring to and how to think about the meaning of the metaphor. In other words, the analog. In Hebrew, there's a mashal, there's a metaphor, and then there's the nimshal. The nimshal is the story that the metaphor is depicting. And generally speaking, there are, like I said, when I speak generally, there are really 2. We're going to break it into 3, but generally there are 2. Generally, the 2 are, the first one is, it's the story of God and the Jewish people, but it's the story of Jewish history. In other words, it's the collective Jewish people. So the sages who read it that way, when they think about the romance and they think about the courting of first the girl to the man and then the man to the girl, it's referring to God and the Jewish people, but it's in the historic context. They say, well, this verse happened in this historical event where God sought the Jewish people. And the other verse is the Jewish people seeking out God. But they think about it in the historic context. And therefore, it's referring to the collective Jewish people. And case in point, we're going to talk about some of those examples, hopefully today. If not today, the next week. So that's one sort of general way of reading the book. Another way, which is more Kabbalistic, and that the Hasidic interpretation that we're going to discuss falls into that category, is that it's not necessarily historic, but it's the individual soul story with the story of the individual soul's relationship with God. In other words, instead of reading the verse and saying, oh, this refers to the Exodus, this refers to the splitting of the sea, this refers to the Jewish people in exile, for example, we say, no, this is every individual soul has its ups and downs and has its desire and it's courting God and God is courting it, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a different category. We're not talking about the historically historic collective Jewish people, but the individual soul trials and tribulations in their relationship with God. Now, just to make it more exciting, within the Kabbalistic view, there are a few schools of the Kabbalah, and specifically, I'm looking at one commentary called the Malbim, which we discussed last time when we studied the book. But I tried to bring him down also to contrast what Chabad philosophy does, which is a little bit different. So by contrasting those two approaches within the spiritual approach, this approach of the soul, that will give us an appreciation of what the Chabad interpretation is doing. So those are the three introductions. I already forgot all three. Let's see if I can remember. First introduction was that the Song of Songs introduces a whole new dimension of the relationship with God, making it not just a relationship of serving God or a child of God, but it's a romantic relationship. Romantic relationships have advantages and disadvantages, but it's a whole nother dimension. That was introduction number one. Introduction number two was when people read it. And number three is the two general ways of interpreting the metaphor of the Song of Songs, either historic, this is the Jewish people collectively, or the individual soul turbulent romantic relationship with God. These are the three introductions. Anybody has questions, comments, please share. Otherwise, we get our toes wet and we start dipping our toes into the beautiful waters of the Song of Songs. Anytime, l'chaim. Okay, everything makes sense. We'll jump right in. So the plan is to read the first two verses today and read some Rashi interpretation, and then read interpretation of other commentaries. And then hopefully we have a few minutes to do the Chabad interpretation. And whatever we don't finish today, we finish next week. Now, it's going to be a little different than last time. Last time when we studied, we tried to get the entire story. Here, we're taking more a targeted approach. We're only going to discuss the verses that Rabbi Shneur Zalman addresses. So out of the whole 8 chapters, I think it's something like 25 verses. So we're not going to cover the whole book, but hopefully we'll get a feel for what's taking place here. So I'm reading the first 2 verses. The Song of Songs, which is Solomon's. Again, it's not such an easy translation. Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs, Asher, which is Lishlomo, to Solomon. Now, what does to Solomon mean? To Solomon means, it could either mean it was sung to Solomon, or it could mean Solomon is singing it, right? This is the song of Menachem. Okay, what does that mean? Sung to Menachem, or that Menachem sung? We'll see in a minute. Certainly, according to the Kabbalistic interpretation, there's 2 interpretations. It could be 1, it could be 2, and of course it can be both. But this is the Song of Songs. Okay, we'll talk about what Song of Songs means. Everything here, there's a discussion about every word here. Okay, so let's begin. Okay, let's begin verse 2. We'll get our toes wet.
Wait, Rabbi, I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
Shir means song and poem. Does it mean anything else? It means poem, right?
A song is a poem. What is a song? In English, there are different types of song. There's a song which means music. There's a song which you sing with your mouth, vocal song. There's a song which is music. There's a song which is just a rhythm. And then there's a song which is poetry, which means the words are written in a way that has a certain rhythm that creates song. In Hebrew, the word shir is very general. So it includes all forms of song. So, because shir can mean a poem, but a poem is a song. What is a song? So that's what I would say. There's another meaning of the word shir in Hebrew, which seems completely unrelated, but according to Rabbi Shneur Zalman, it's very much related. It's put down in these discourses, but it's put down in other places as well. It's very interesting. So there's a Mishnah. I'm going off topic here a little bit, but it's important. There's a Mishnah that talks about the Mishnah of Shabbat. So Shabbat is the tractate of Shabbat, which discusses the prohibited and permitted labors on Shabbat. One of the prohibited labors of Shabbat is carrying. So a person cannot go outside carrying something on Shabbat unless, like you live in Greenwich and there's an Eruv, then you can. In certain parts of Greenwich, that is. Now, that gets more complicated. Even your animal, the animal cannot go out carrying a burden. Okay, but Jews always have to complicate things, so it's always more complicated. So the question becomes, what is considered a burden? If the animal is wearing something, but it needs it, is it a burden? So if it's cold and the animal's wearing a sweater, today I sit on my block and everyone's walking the dogs, and sometimes the dogs have beautiful sweaters. So the question becomes, is that carrying? Is the dog carrying? The answer is, well, if it's serving the dog, it's not carrying. If it's just a burden, then it is carrying. Okay, fine. Then there's a Mishnah that says like this. The Mishnah says that any animal that its custom is to go out into this public domain with a ring. I don't know exactly where they would put the ring, around the neck or in the mouth, at the different opinions, but a ring so the owner could pull the animal. So somehow there's a ring and the ring is connected to the string, to the rope, and they would pull the animal. So if this is the custom, the way this specific animal goes out into the public domain, says the Mishnah, then you're allowed to go out with that ring on Shabbat. Sounds like completely unrelated. What am I talking about? The funny thing is, in Hebrew, the word for that ring is shir, which is the same exact letters as song. What has one got to do with the other? So the language of the Mishnah is kol ba'alei hashir. I'm going to read it literally and then explain what it means. Literally is any master of the song is drawn out by the song. What do I mean? Any master of the ring, any animal that usually has that ring could go out, could be drawn out on Shabbat with the ring. Says Rabbi Shneir Zalman, what's the connection between the ring and the song? Okay, so Vicky's getting poetic. I see it ready. I see something. I see you ready. You're saying something. Open up your mic so we can hear.
Well, the song can draw you in the way
First of all, a song is round like a ring, right? A song, typically, you have a prose is linear. You start from the beginning and you say your point, you make your 3 points, and you move on, right? A song doesn't work that way. A song is linear. A song goes again and again. The more it inspires you, the more you're inspired to sing it again. So the round ring is like a song. That's the connection. The songs go round and round, and the ring goes round and round. And then Vicky's right. The Alter Rebbe says, Rabbi Shneir Zalman says, you want to bring your animal out. Animal is your internal animal. You want to bring your animal out? Do it through song. Okay, so that's the spiritual way of reading that law. The animal, which is the personal animal, which is this is inspired by song. So take it out. Let it go out of its own domain. Let it transcend itself through song. So the only reason why I bring this in is because Neil says, what is the meaning of the word song? So I said song is very general. And the idea of repetition, the song repeats itself, it's not linear, is also the reason why you get in Mishnaic Hebrew, at least, that a shear, a ring for the animal, is also the same word as a shear. What's the connection? Because when we say song, we mean song in the most broadest of contexts. So that is just by way of parenthetically. Okay.
So I just want to comment that from all I know, the languages I know, they also treat the song very broadly. Like in English and Russian, it's also very broad.
Right. English is, I think it's specific because Neil is right. There's poetry and there's music.
Not necessarily. It can be. It
Depends
can be.
if you're a poet. It depends if you're a poet. Okay. Okay. In a minute, what's going on over here? Okay, in a minute or two, we'll open up the Rashis here. But let's read the next verse. Yishakeni, let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is better than wine. Okay, very poetic. The song says, Yishakeni. So this is the woman talking. How do I know? Because pihu, his mouth is masculine. So this is the woman talking. The opening few verses is the woman or the young girl talking to her beloved. Who her beloved is, we're not sure yet. But she says, what does she say? Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. I want to kiss, and I want to kiss from the mouth. Why? For your love is better than wine. Okay. Now, once we get to the unpacking what this means, we have to figure out what is a kiss, what is a kiss from the mouth, why is love better than wine, what is wine, and what is the love that's better than wine. Apparently, wine is also good, but love is better than wine. Okay, fine. So I'm going to hit the button here. I'm going to click the Rashi, and you will see how the sages, Rashi is really quoting the sages of the Medrash, and that they refer to this as we are talking historic. And when I say historic, I don't just mean the past, I also mean the future, because here the girl is saying, let him kiss me in the future tense. But we're talking about something that refers to the entire Jewish people in the future tense. So let's open this up. Let's see what happens. Okay, the first thing we're going to say is as follows. In other books of that Solomon writes, like for example Kohelet, it says these are the words of Kohelet, the son of David. Here it doesn't say the son of David. It says Shlomo Solomon. This leads the rabbis to say that who's Shlomo? Who's Solomon? Solomon is God. Why is God Solomon? Shlomo, because Shlomo comes from the word shalom, peace. This is the king who peace is to him. In other words, God creates the peace. God creates the peace. Ultimately, God creates the unity in the world. So let's read it inside. Our rabbis taught in Talmud Shavuot, every Solomon, now the bracket explains, for they were at a loss to explain why scripture did not mention his father, as it did in Proverbs and Ecclesiastics, which is Kohelet. Mentioned, so in the other two books, it says the son of David. Here, it doesn't say the son of David. So how come? So the rabbis say every Solomon mentioned in the Song of Songs is sacred, refers to God, the king whom peace belongs to him. In other words, Shir HaShirim, this is the song that we, collective Jewish people, sing to God. Where is God? The Shlomo. Shlomo, Solomon is God. How do you know Solomon is God? Maybe Solomon is the King Solomon? Yeah, but if it would be King Solomon, it would be like the other books Solomon wrote. He would write Solomon, son of David. Here it doesn't say son of David because we're referring to God. Now, what does it mean? The Song of Songs, says Rashi, it is a song that is above all songs, which was recited to the Holy One, blessed be he, by his congregation and his people, the congregation of Israel. In other words, the whole Bible is full of songs. This is the greatest song of all the songs. Why? Perhaps because it introduces the romantic love element, which in some sense is the greatest form of the relationship. And this is a very famous statement, which I must tell you, which I must read, and then we'll go to the next Rashi. Rabbi Akiva said, the world was never as worthy as on the day that the Song of Songs was given to Israel. For all the writings are holy, whereas the Song of Songs is the holiest of the holy. Okay, so what is Rabbi Akiva saying? Of all the scripture, of all the verses in the Torah, this song is the holiest of all the other verses. And he says, no other day was as great as when the Song of Songs was given to Israel. In other words, when the Song of Songs was written, it's greater than the giving of the Torah. How so? It's a very radical statement. So probably it's because this depicts a very powerful form of love. Okay, that's the introduction. Now we go to verse 2. Verse 2 says, let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. Who are we talking about? Rashi says, remember I told you we're referring to, according to Rashi, we're talking about the historical perspective. The Jewish people are now in exile. When they are in exile, they're separated from their beloved, from God. So the Jewish people in exile, they yearn and they long and they say, let God kiss me from the kisses of his mouth, the way God kissed us back at Sinai, as we will speak, as we will discuss. So let's read Rashi. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. She recites this song with her mouth in her exile and in her widowhood. If only King Solomon would kiss me with the kisses of his mouth as of old. Because in some places they kiss on the back of the hand, or on the shoulder. But I desire and wish that he behave toward me as he behaved toward me originally, like the bridegroom with the bride, mouth to mouth. Okay, so we're talking about the Jewish people in exile. God's kissed us. We'll see later, kiss means giving us the Torah. God kissed us, God spoke to us mouth to mouth. When did God speak to us mouth to mouth? The verse says at Sinai, Moses tells the Jewish people, Panim bepanim diber Hashem machem. God spoke to you face to face at Sinai. So now he's sending us messages. God always talks to us, but the talk is not directly. He kisses us on our mouth, on the back. We want face to face. And when is that going to be? In the future. In the future, when Mashiach comes, and that's will be the next Rashi. For your love is better than wine. For it is better. Your love is better to me more than any wine banquet and more than any pleasure and joy. In the Hebrew language, every banquet or pleasure and joy is called after the wine, as it is stated, to the house of the wine feast. In song shall we drink wine. And there were harp and lutes, tambourine and flute, and wine in their drinking feasts. This is the explanation of the apparent meaning. Okay, so Rashi says very simple. We want God's kiss more than we want any other party. In other words, in this world, there are plenty of pleasures, but the pleasure that we really want is the pleasure of God's kiss. That's Rashi says that's the first interpretation. What does it mean? So Rashi says the figure of speech was used because he gave them the Torah and spoke to them face to face. And that love is still more pleasant to them than any pleasure. And they are assured by him that he will appear to them to explain to them the secret of its reasons and its hidden mysteries. And they entreat him to fulfill his word. And this is the meaning of let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. What does Rashi say? We got the Torah at Sinai. At Sinai, God kissed us. God spoke to us face to face. The problem is that when you get the Torah, we only got the revealed part of the Torah. The hidden part of the Torah, the mysteries of the Torah, was not yet revealed to us. Even the Kabbalah that seeks to reveal the secrets of the Torah, it only reveals a drop in the bucket. So Rashi says the Jewish people know that in the end of days, in the Messianic era, God will reveal to us the secrets of the Torah. And that's, according to Rashi, that's what the verse is saying. We say, please kiss me from the kisses of your mouth because your kisses are more beloved than wine. We're saying, we want God to come to us once again and give us the secrets of the Torah, just like he has in the past, came to us and gave us the revealed part of the Torah. So this, as you see, is Rashi's interpretation, which is historic. We are referring to the Jewish people in exile, and what the Jewish people are asking for, they're saying we want that God should come kiss us face to face, which means speak to us face to face, which means reveal to us the secrets of the Torah as you had at Sinai. That's the setting. The setting is we are now in exile. We're hoping for the future. And that's why the opening verse is Yishakeni, he shall kiss me, future tense. That's what we are yearning for. That's Rashi. That's historic. Now, of course, we have enough. We're just getting started. We have to get to the other dimension, the personal, spiritual dimension. And within that, we have two tracks, the Malbim and Chabad. So we have a lot to do. So I don't know if we'll finish it all today, but again, we're starting. We have to start somewhere. Go ahead, Vicky.
Maybe you'll talk about it later. So first of all, I want to point out that the Stone translation includes that. It says you're in the most wisdom, includes
Let me stop for a second. The Stone edition, the Art Scroll edition, does not translate the Song of Songs. Instead, it explains. I don't know why they do it, either because they're afraid of all the eroticism in the song, and they don't want people reading it. They're afraid of the eroticism, perhaps, or they want to explain. I don't like that Stone edition for that reason. I think you have to read what the verse is saying, and the verse is speaking in a metaphor. Then you read the Rashi and see what Rashi says and how to explain it. But you're absolutely right. You're going to read the Stone edition. You're going to get straight to the analog, which takes out the entire beauty, which is, if I would buy the Stone edition, the Song of Songs from the Stone edition, I would trade it in because I want my money back. Because
yeah, and that's why probably we were not that drawn by that Song of Songs that we should have been. Right. And you're going to probably speak about it now because we are drawn. I mean, we want to have that personal, intimate relationship with God. And that's what it's probably referring to.
Oh, so you're going to the Kabbalah. So hang there. Don't go anywhere. Yeah, hang on to that.
Rabbi, I have a question for you as well. I thought at Sinai that we couldn't actually deal with God face to face, so we had Moses deal with him.
We said enough. We said it's too much. We need Moses. But God, in the Torah, Moses says in the book of Deuteronomy, when he describes Sinai, he says, I'll give you the chapter or verse if my Google would work. Panim bepanim diber Hashem imachem. God spoke to you face to face. In other words, face to face means direct. It was direct prophecy. There was no there was no translation or it didn't go through Moses. Moses was only after, because that experience was so overwhelming. We tell God, please, we don't want to hear you face to face. We need Moses to be the in between. But that was only a sign of spiritual weakness. Eventually, when the Messianic era happens, we're all going to be prophets. We're all going to experience direct revelation, just like at Sinai. So the future Messianic era, we go back to Sinai. At Sinai itself, God spoke to us face to face. It was too overwhelming. So we said, enough. You're right. You're right about that. We said, we don't want that. God can't speak to us face to face. We will die. But that was saying, people were saying, it's too much. Please stop this revelation. But at Sinai, as Moshe himself says, Moshe describes it. Well, we know there's direct revelation, but Moshe himself describes it as panim bepanim diber Hashem imachem. God spoke to you face to face. You need the chapter and verse is Deuteronomy 5:4.
What was the verse?
Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 4. Panim bepanim, face to face, Hashem spoke to you, Bahar, the mountain, mitoch ha'esh, from amidst the fire. So Rashi is saying that when we say, I want God to kiss me, and Rashi says, don't kiss me on the hand, don't kiss me on the back, I want to be kissed on the mouth. What does that mean? It means, of course, we have, in the last 3,000 years, we had a relationship with God. We have communication from God. We have prophets, we have scholars, we have inspiration, we have divine providence. We have all kinds of ways where God interacts with us. But we say, we don't want that. We want direct. We want a kiss on the mouth. And that is the revelation of the secrets of the Torah that are going to happen in the future. And we know what's going to happen. We're yearning for that time. That's Rashi. That's historic. Historic, I mean, it's the collective Jewish people, and it's referring to a specific time in history. And then we're going to get to the Kabbalistic interpretation, which says, no, it's the individual soul. And that's what we're going to address just about right now.
Is back referring to when God talks about going by and only seeing his back as he passes?
It could be. I don't know. Probably. I mean, yeah. I mean, it means indirect. We're always getting forms of prophecy and forms of divine communication, either through the prophets, but that wasn't direct. It was through the prophet, or through the Torah, or like I said. So it could mean, I'm not gonna rule it out, but I'm not gonna say I don't think it's exclusive to that. I think in general, when something is not direct in biblical Hebrew, that's the back. When you don't see it directly, when you see it indirectly.
Thank you.
And is it, I mean, maybe that's again Stone translation, but is it kind of sounds similar to the Parsha that we read this week, that you treasure relationship with God more than earthly delights? I don't know if
that's beautiful. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. That's a beautiful thing. We're going to get to exactly what that means. According to the Kabbalah, we're going to fine tune that. It's not fine tune. It's not earthly delights. We're going to fine tune it.
And it's
yeah. But yeah, the point is that what does the person want to hear from the lover? You have a relationship. You're dating. What do you want to hear from the person? You're on a date. What do you really want? Okay, so the way I like to think about it is, what you want is you want the other person to want to be here, right? In other words, if there's no will, if the other person doesn't want to be here, it's not a relationship. That's the most important part. So when the girl turns to God and says, "Kiss me by your mouth," what she has to really say is, "I really want you. I want you more than anything else." Right? So if we're turning to God and say, we want you to come back and give us the secrets of the Torah and reveal your presence to us as you did at Sinai, what you really have to communicate to God is that's what you really want. Yeah, but God saw you went on vacation, you went on a cruise, you're sitting in the jacuzzi, you have other pleasures. Yeah, I have other pleasures. I go to other parties, but your love is sweeter to me than all the other wine parties. So we're not saying you can't have other wine parties, but you have to say, this is the most important pleasure. This is the thing that I want most. So this is very poetic in my view, I think. Okay. So you really, to get to to really appreciate the Chabad interpretation and the personal interpretation, I'm gonna keep the Malbim for next week because Malbim mostly speaks about verse 2, which we read. But Rabbi Shneur Zalman already has a lot on verse 1. So let's go back to verse 1 for a moment, and we'll try to unpack verse 1. I know it's 10:38. With your permission, I plead that you stick on for another few minutes. We'll do maybe go 5 minutes overtime, and we'll see if we could start to get into what Rabbi Shneur Zalman is saying on verse 1. Of course, we're not going to cover it all today. I apologize. I got too carried away with Rashi and with the introductions, but we'll see what we can do here. So the first thing we want to talk about is the Song of Songs. So what Rabbi Shneur Zalman is going to say here is we have multiple songs, and he addresses all the multiple songs. How many songs do we have here? Song of Songs. So if you have to give a number, Song of Songs, spiritually speaking, how many songs are we addressing? Well, that's sort of what's the minimum?
One.
So, well, no, it has to be plural. Hashirim has to be plural, has to be 2. But Rabbi Shneur Zalman says it's really at least 4. Why is he saying 4? Because I alluded to earlier, it's not clear who's singing. When you say this is the song to Solomon, it either means being sung to Solomon. Let's assume for a moment that Solomon is the beloved man and the woman is singing to him. That's one way to sing it. Another way is, no, this is the song to Solomon. Solomon, the man, is writing this song. So which one is it? So whenever we have 2 opinions, according to the Kabbalah, the answer is what? The answer is both. So from the Kabbalistic perspective, we have 2 songs from the man, 2 songs from the woman. And that's why we're saying this is the songs that includes all of the songs, all 4 songs. And the beauty is Asher li Shlomo, we're going to get into later that Shlomo, the word Shlomo itself includes multiple songs, because I'll give it away, because Shlomo itself includes both the masculine and feminine. So because Shlomo includes both masculine and feminine, so we say this is the song which is Shlomo. Shlomo comes from the word shalom, peace, which comes from the word complete. This is the complete song. Why is it complete? Because it includes both the masculine and feminine. Why does Shlomo include masculine and feminine? Because the word shalom is masculine, peace is masculine, but the hey in the back makes it feminine. Shlomo, the hey makes it feminine. So we have a masculine word with the hey that makes it feminine. What we're saying here is this song includes all the songs. What are all the songs? Both the masculine song and the feminine song. What's happening here? So the first thing Rabbi Shneur Zalman says is that, you see this in the words of the sages as well, that God is the Chatan, God is the bride, and the Jewish people are the groom. And he gets into the word Chatan and Kala. What is bride and groom? And from the Kabbalistic perspective, and the biological perspective as well, but the Kabbalistic perspective, the masculine energy is the energy that is going to descend to give life to the lower worlds. That's what the word chatan, that's sort of the etymology of the word chatan. In Aramaic, which is very closely connected to Hebrew, the word chut, not chut as a string with tests, but chut, chet, vav, taf, is to descend. And the giver is descending. So God is descending into the world. That's the word, that's what God is called the chatan. Now what's kala? Kala, what's the groom? The groom comes from the word kala, means to long, means to, there's two really two meanings to kala. Kala can mean to, kilayon means to lose one's own sense of self. In other words, like the fire that consumes and destroys. That's one meaning. And another meaning is yearning. Like in Tehillim, in the book of Psalms, you have this many times. Kal ta nafshi, my soul yearns. So what we have here is we have the masculine song and the feminine song. The masculine song is God drawing down, coming down into this world to give life to this world. The feminine song is the Jewish people yearning to go up back to Hashem. And what we're saying here is that both of this this movement from God to the people and from the people to God is both of these are called a song because it's achieved through a song. Now, I said we're not going to have time to get into this really. There's two songs for the Jewish people because there's two levels of love, two general levels of love. And that's why there are two songs. And the two levels of love from the Jewish people to God elicits two levels of God's descent into this world. The more we love him, the more he descends. So maybe we'll get into it this week, maybe next week. But let's start just to be general for a moment. What we're saying here is Shir HaShirim. There's a song that includes all songs. There's a song that includes all songs. There are songs, the way we connect to God, the way we yearn to God, both the way God comes down to us and how we go up to God it happens through the song. Now, Rabbi Shneur Zalman points out that the word Yisrael, Israel, has multiple meanings. So typically we use it from the word sar, which is minister, right? Because we ministered over the angel. Jacob, when he ministered over the angel said, your name will be not Yaakov, but Yisrael, because Sarita, you became a minister over God, over the angel. But if you look at the letters Yisrael, you could do it Yishar El, or Yishar or change the order, Shir, the letter Shin Yud Resh, Yisrael, Shir El, the song of God. What is the Jewish people? The Jewish people is those who yearn for God and sing the song of yearning to God. So Shir HaShirim, this book describes the multiple songs, both of the people to God and of God to the people. Okay. Why do I say there are multiple songs? I'll start from the people to God because it's easier. So there's two levels of love. One level of love is what we say in the Shema. You should love the God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. And the sages say this means that a person loves God to the extent that there's nothing else in the world significant other than the love of God, and therefore a person is prepared to sacrifice his own life to connect to God. Right? In the words, love the Lord your God with all your might, it's because Rashi, with all your soul, with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your soul, the sages say, even if God takes your soul. In other words, if you have to sacrifice between your own life and God, you give up your life to God. That's one form of love. Obviously, that form of love is much more powerful and intense. But then there's a lower form of love. The lower form of love is also written in the book of Deuteronomy. It says, La'avat Hashem Elokecha ki hu chayecha. Love the Lord your God because he is your life. That's a totally different perspective. Why do I love God? Because God gives me life. So what do I really like? I really like my life. On the second level, would I give up my life for God? No, I only like God because he gives me life. Why would I give up my life for God? Right? Let's say there's a parent. Let's say there's a child. The child likes the parent because the parent gives the child chocolate. Okay. Works better with grandparents. Okay, no, I'm not gonna get the grandparents involved. The child likes the parent because the parent gives the child a chocolate. So you're gonna say that I would sacrifice my chocolate for my parent? Of course not. I only like my parent because my parent gives me chocolate. Right? So that's the lower level of love. Love the Lord your God because he's your life. He gives you life. Okay, the lower level of love. The higher level of love is everything else, the chocolate and everything else is insignificant. All I want is God himself. And therefore, if there is a conflict between my life and God, I choose God. When we say this, go ahead.
Where was that, the second verse? Love your God because he is your life?
That is in the book of Deuteronomy. We'll find it right here. Deuteronomy 30:20.
Thank you.
Love the Lord your God, listen to his voice, cleave to him because he is your life and he's the length of your days, to sit on a land which God promised to your ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and to give to them. Love God. Why? Because he gives you a plot in Israel with nice fruit and pita and falafel. Okay, that's why you love God. Wonderful. But then you're not going to sacrifice your falafel for God. I only love God because he gives me falafel. So these are the two levels of God, of love. And they're both valid. In other words, there's two levels of love. Sometimes a person loves God. A lower level of love is because I feel myself. and I realize what God does for me, and that makes me love God, right? But that's a love of God that's a much lower level where I am the center. And then there's the higher level of love, which is it's not about me, it's about cleaving to God. And therefore I would sacrifice everything I have for God. Now, says Rabbi Shneur Zalman, these are the two general songs. Because if you want to talk about all the shades of love really fall into one of these two categories. Is it centered on the human being? The Kabbalah would call it Yechudei Tata, the lower level of unity, where I feel myself, but I feel that God is giving me life, but I am the center. That's one category of love. The other category of love is I'm not thinking about myself at all, I'm thinking about God, right? And even when human relationships, you would have the same thing. You have, sometimes I love you because how you make me feel. I like you because what you do for me. That's a wonderful level of love, but that's not the deeper level of love. The deeper level of love is I love you because I want to connect to you. And in some sense, I'm willing to sacrifice my own personal well-being for somebody that I love. That's a much more profound and deeper level of love. And any level of love would fall into one of these two categories. And that's what Rabbi Shneur Zalman says. That's why we have Shir HaShirim, multiple songs. Why multiple songs? Because you have these two categories. And if you want to get Kabbalistic for a moment, because we are studying Kabbalah, we know there's 4 spiritual worlds. The 3 lower spiritual worlds is where we reside. We reside in the lowest spiritual world. So Rabbi Shneur Zalman says that the lower level of love is in the 3 lower worlds. The higher level of love is in the world of Atzilut. To be in a space where nothing of my life and anything I have is insignificant. The only thing that's significant is the unit is connecting to God. If you're in that space, you're in the highest world. You're in the world of Atzilut. So there are 2 songs. There are songs that people, the creations of the 3 lower worlds are yearning upward. That's the lower level of love. We love God because God gives us life. But then you can reach the world of Atzilut, and the world of Atzilut is, I love God because God is the only thing that's significant. I'm willing to give up my life. In other words, it's not about me, it's about God. That's the higher song. Okay, give me another 60 seconds to be a little Kabbalistic. These 2 levels of love elicit God's love to us as well. And again, God is infinite. So we have to bring God down 2 steps. We have to bring him into the 4th world, the world of Atzilut, and then we have to bring him into the lower 3 worlds. That's the 2 songs. Remember, we started out, movement happens through song, right? That was the idea that Kol Balei Ashir, all the animals, literally everything that's drawn is drawn through song. So when we have 2 levels of love, in other words, the 3 lower worlds yearn and the 4th world yearns. And these 2 levels elicit God's drawing down and God's sort of drawing down God into first the 4th world and then the lowest 3 worlds. So that's masculine and feminine. Going upward is feminine, being drawn down is masculine. Shlomo is the masculine and feminine together. Shir HaShirim Asher L'Shlomo. This is the song that includes all songs, and we have a world Shlomo, which is a combination of masculine and feminine. Peace between the masculine and feminine energy, because the unity between the going up and the coming down, that's the unity between God and the Jewish people. But how many songs are there? There are 4. Because there are 2 levels of love from the people to God, and that brings down God to us, the 2 levels, either the world of Atzilut or the world of, or the 3 lower worlds, which is in simple English, it means the 2 levels of love. The lower level of love is where I'm the center. I love God because he gives me what I need. Okay, it's wonderful. But of course, it's that I am the center, or I love God because I'm not, I put him in the center, and everything, my own needs are insignificant compared to my desire to cleave to him. And those are the 2 general buckets, categories of love, and those elicit God's also coming down either to the 4th world or to the 3 lower worlds. And ladies and gentlemen, this is the story literally in a nutshell, literally in short. There's so much more to say, but I think next week we'll go to verse 2. We started verse 2 according to Rashi, but we still have a lot to do verse 2 according to the Kabbalah. I enjoyed it very much. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining the song. Thank you. Have a wonderful day, wonderful Shabbos. Go ahead, Vicky.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm still stuck at the title, Song of Songs. And I think it, in a sense, it's even broader than 4 songs, because it's the source of all the songs, because the goal of songs, whether it's music or poetry, music kind of getting closer. Poetry, no matter how many words you write, you still cannot express all of your feelings. Okay. So it's kind of a kernel, it's a source, a seed for all the songs that possibly can be written by human beings. So King David's songs will have many words. They were written later, right? And then all the poetry, all the music that's written. So that's how I understand the title.
Okay, so hang on for another 60 seconds. There's a second discourse on the verse, which says very similar to what you're saying. The second discourse says like this. The second discourse says that Shir HaShiri means as follows. Shirim is songs, is all human songs, all human yearning, all human yearning. Where does it come from? It comes from the original song. The song of all songs, the song which is the root of all songs. What's the root? What are all the songs? Every individual person has a song, has a yearning. As long as I'm drawn to something. What's the source of all yearning? The source of all yearning, according to Kabbalah, is Malchut of Atzilut. The highest world, the fourth world, has 10 sfirot. The lowest sphira, Malchut, descends into the lower worlds to give energy to the lower worlds. Remember I said on Shabbat, Malchut comes back up. Aliyat Malchut. Malchut, during the 6 days, yearns to reunite with its source. Every other yearning on the face of this universe in the 3 lower worlds ultimately descends because deep down, the energy of this world, Malchut of Atzilut, yearns to go back to its source. There's a beautiful verse in Psalm number 30. In order that glory should sing to you and never be silent. So the Zohar says, glory is Malchut, Malchut is kingship, glory. Glory should sings and never is silent. In other words, Malchut of until Shabbat. Shabbat is the reunification. But during the 6 days, there's a deep yearning in the universe. What is the deep yearning in the universe? The deep yearning in the universe is that the energy of the world wants to go back to its source. Every other love song that you hear on FM radio or on what else people listen to nowadays, on Spotify, all the other yearning, any other yearning that exists is only an expression, it's only a shade of the ultimate yearning. The ultimate yearning is that the energy of the world wants to go back to its source. And every yearning we feel is an expression of that yearning. So what you said is the second interpretation of Rabbi Shneur Zalman. Thank you for bringing it up. So we have to squeeze it in. I just apologize, we're 15 minutes late. Maybe we'll have to extend the Friday class because there's too much here.
Thank you very much. Seems like Kabbalah explains the human emotions much better than any art form, and definitely much better than science.
I think we're getting to the essence. I think we're getting to the essence. So science has its role. Science is describing the physical, but we're also spirit. There's also a spiritual reality, and science is not able to capture the spiritual reality.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Wonderful day. Wonderful Shabbat. Good to see everybody. And let's keep singing. Keep the song alive.
Amen.
Yasha Koach, Rabbi.